Good morning. Charles assures us, and I can feel it already, they're turning down the air in here, so we'll get more comfortable. It's a little steamy after being an icebox yesterday, so hang in there with us. I'm thrilled to see all of you here this morning. We're very fortunate to be joined by some very sharp thinkers from the publishing end, funding, and librarianship who are going to talk with us about how scholarship can be curated and interpreted and used better by our patrons. First thing this morning, we're going to hear about 2 Mellon-funded projects designed to break new ground in discoverability and the linking of humanities texts, and to create iterative editions of scholarly works that will evolve alongside the scholarship itself. Talking about these 2 programs will be Susan Doerr, who's the operations manager at the University of Minnesota Press and co-principal investigator for the Manifold Scholarship Project, and Faran, who's director emerita at the MIT Press and is the project manager for the UPScope project. Then we'll hear from Helen Cullyer, program officer in the Scholarly Communications Division at the Mellon Foundation, who is helping fund these 2 projects and many others, and she's going to talk with us a little bit more broadly about Mellon's work and interest in this area. Then we're going to hear from Carreno, head of collection development for the Division of Libraries at NYU, and Tyler Walters, who's dean of university libraries and professor at Virginia Tech. So we'll hear from all ends, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists so we leave a lot of time for questions this morning.
Good morning. I'm Susan Doerr with the University of Minnesota Press, and I am pleased to present to you Manifold, which is our new publication platform for a new type of scholarly publication outcome, which we're calling the iterative edition. Manifold is composed of 2 parts in the project. The first is the development of the platform itself, where we will publish the work. The other is changing the workflow for authors and for publishers so that we can produce these works in a consistent and replicable way without recreating them over and over each time. So Manifold has grown out of some experiments that we've done at Minnesota. One of those is called Forerunners, Ideas First. And so the idea with Forerunners is trying to create a new place where scholars can formally publish their work that they're doing that's in progress. So Forerunners are about 25 to 30,000 words. They are what we've been calling gray literature, that space where it's not yet ready to be a full monograph, but they're ideas and scholars want to publish them and start having a dialogue about them. We've used some new tools to publish them quickly. These can be done in 12 weeks instead of 12 months. And some of them are turning into full monographs. And so, for example, the Green Book at the Anthropocene by UC Perica is now a book called A Geology of New Media. In the Manifold platform, that could have happened, and the Forerunner could exist with the monograph. And you could just move between them and see the changes and the adaptations that you made. Now you have the print object and the ebook object, and you have to go from one to the other. So this new monograph format, the iterative edition, not a great word, iterative edition, but the idea here is that they're networked. They're of the web. They're published with enhanced resources like video. They can have audio. They can have additional maps, additional photos. I mean, whatever scholars can think that we can turn into a digital file can be part of the project on Manifold. And it's really important for us. We're not thinking of Manifold's publications as books per se. Instead, we're calling them projects. And those projects are a mix of resources and tasks. And they will be monographs, and we will produce a released version in Manifold and in print. So it's going to be a hybrid project where we will have, both the container, the static edition, and the dynamic edition living on the web. So in creating Manifold, we had a prototype called Debates in the Digital Humanities. Now this is an open access website. It's currently housed at CUNY. And you can read the full book. You can interact with the book. You can interact with other readers through the annotation features. But Debates wasn't scalable. It was designed for one book, and you needed some programming knowledge in order to get the text on there. What we've done with Manifold, or what we're in the process of doing, is making it something that any university press, or just generally publishing production staff, will be able to upload and put text into the Manifold. You don't need to be a programmer in order to use it as a tool. So this is Manifold, or a start of it. And we want want readers to be able to read on whatever device they have in their hand. If they're sitting at their computer, they can read it on that screen. If they've got their phone, they can read it on that screen. For a tablet, they can read it on that screen. We want them to be able to interact on any device that they're using. And so in doing our wireframing and considering our features, we've got all the potential devices in mind so that we can make it a good experience, beautiful experience, no matter where they're reading. So the platform is built for authors and publishers. This is a publishing tool. It is not a production tool, and it's important to make that distinction. When you are loading a work into Manifold, the two file formats that we're taking in and adjusting are either EPUB or Markdown. You still have to do all the production work in the publication process to get to that EPUB. You still do your copy editing outside of Manifold. You still do your proofreading outside of Manifold. And what you bring into Manifold, what we'll parse is the EPUB file, and then all the resources. The Manifold Library is a collection of projects, and it's a collection of formally published books. Now, these are not books in Manifold. These are just some pretty covers we've done. But the idea is that it will be a mix of works in progress, the iterative edition, and then the formal release version. And we are preparing Manifold in a way that it will be a tool set that you can use and install yourself if you want to publish books. And we'll be giving it away. This is open source, and it will be free. And it should be, anybody with basic technical knowledge should be able to install it and use it to publish. But reading is really only the beginning for scholars, students, readers, anyone coming to a Manifold book. We want them to be able to do more than read. And so annotate, contribute, discuss. All of these are the kinds of features. Social media integration, we want it to be networked. We want this to be a dynamic experience, not the flat replication of the static reading experience we have today. Reading is interactive, so why can't you interact? We want to enable that interactivity. And we want, in some cases, if the authors want to have dialogues with their readers, we would like to enable that on the platform. Going back to our debates in the Digital Humanities platform, we're currently doing an assessment and analysis of how annotation has been used on that platform so that we can anticipate and solve some of the problems we have there in the Manifold platform. We're committed to open. So as we do the code development, as we do the process, everything will be visible if you want to follow along. You can either follow along in our blog. We will be releasing development versions as we go, and we've in fact decided to ingest some previously published books so you can see how content renders and interact and demo it as we build it. It will be an open source code base, and so anybody can use it, adapt it, take it, and do your own thing if you don't like how we built it. But if you want to use it the way we built it, you're welcome to do that too. And then for Minnesota, the books that we publish in this platform will be open access. Now that doesn't mean everyone has to publish open access if they use Manifold to publish themselves. You could erect a paywall. We're not going to do that. We feel that open is a real important priority as part of this project. So follow us along. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me. And you're also welcome to tweet at me, and I will respond there.
UPScope, which is the working title for an online resource for University Press and Monopress. UPScope is a project of the American Association of University Presses, AAUP, and the planning grant is funded by the Mellon Foundation. We are hoping to have a full implementation proposal for the project next spring. UPScope will provide a single place for peer-reviewed scholarship selected and curated by university presses. We are exploring the full range of access and delivery models for the platform, seeking to meet the current and evolving research needs of scholars. The improved discoverability of our content will support existing purchasing practices. And as a service to UPScope users, we plan to provide purchasing and paid access options on the platform. Beyond gathering university press content in one place, UPScope will feature an innovative search function. Our inspiration is AcademyScope, now online at the National Academies Press. AcademyScope uses a natural language search engine called the Related Engine that uses the full text of books to go deeper than metadata in order to identify connections among titles. This search algorithm is what's known as an inference engine. It can extract key terms from full text to create indexes that can map to existing taxonomies, thereby revealing relationships across fields and leading to novel discovery. And they have a way cool visualization, which I am not able to show you because I have a mere screenshot here, but this is all animated. If you select a major topic on the right-hand list, subtopics literally bubble up to show you what's happening, and you get a spiderweb network of the book you're after and the books that are connected to it. This is so inadequate that I'm sure you want to check it out. So the way to find it again is AcademyScope, or go to nap.edu. Many of us have long envisioned a collaborative, all-university press catalog in the sky. Even better, the timing of this planning effort for UPScope means that we can marshal tools for uses far beyond a catalog, deep semantic search, and options for access, sharing, and content delivery. So please stay tuned for more news about UPScope.
I don't have slides, so I'm just going to sit here, I think, and talk for a few minutes. So I'm Helen Cullyer. I'm the Program Officer for Scholarly Communications at the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. I work very closely with Don Waters, who I'm sure many of you know. I'm just very briefly going to take you through some of our sort of funding priorities and strategies. I'm not going to speak in depth about Manifold and UPScope, but rather place those initiatives in a broader context. So since sort of mid to late 2014, we've been engaged in a pretty major scholarly publishing grant-making initiative. Our goals are to assist not-for-profit publishers disseminate and produce high-quality humanities publications on the web, to do that in a way that's financially sustainable, and to make those publications as broadly accessible as possible. We're focused on sort of a couple of broad areas. Firstly, the sort of financial economic questions, those sustainable financial models. And we have quite an emphasis at the moment on trying to determine the real cost of publication. So some of you may have seen Nancy Merritt's presentation yesterday. This is a study still in progress, led by Ithaca S&R, to really do a pretty broad survey of monograph publication costs across U.S. university presses, or a reasonably large sample, and to figure out in a standardized, normalized way what the costs really are. And I think having seen some of that preliminary data, the important thing to realize is that you can't really reduce the cost of a monograph to one number. There are questions about direct costs, indirect costs, and in-kind costs. We've also been doing some work with institutions, Michigan, Indiana, and Emory, to figure out institutions' appetite, really, at the senior level of the administration, to pay fees for their faculty to publish open access monographs, assuming standard peer review editorial procedures like reputable presses. And that it seems actually that for those three institutions there is some appetite to do that. Obviously there are some issues surrounding sort of equity. What about the institutions that couldn't pay? What about non-tenure track faculty? But this has been an interesting set of investigations to really figure out at the level of not just librarians, but deans and provosts, sort of pushing a little bit on how institutions are going to think and going forward about funding publication in the humanities and social sciences. So the other area that we're really focusing on is the development of infrastructure, both human and technical, for peer review, editing, production, marketing, dissemination, discovery of scholarly publications in the humanities. And by scholarly publications, we're really thinking about sort of three different areas: journals, books, and also non-book-like things. So things that are the products of digital scholarship that can really only be disseminated on the web, that can't be printed, and that really stretch the definition perhaps of a monograph to its breaking point. So just to give you a few examples, other than UPScope and Manifold, what we've been funding in the journal space, the Open Library of Humanities, collaboration between Martin Eve, now at University, now at Birkbeck, and the Ubiquity Press. So this is a mega-journal in the humanities, allows for overlay journals, funding model contributed by, funded by contributions by libraries. And if you saw Brian Hall from Ubiquity Press's presentation yesterday, or the day before, the great thing about this is really the low cost of journal production on that platform. In the book space, sort of the evolving ebook space, the monograph is, I think, an evolving genre, as we've heard with Manifold. One project that is just at the planning phase right now, and we're hoping will go forward to the implementation phase next year, is Muse Open. So this is Project Muse has been planning, is planning right now to develop the capacity to host OA, EPUB books on its platform alongside the content behind the paywall. And so that seems really important as OA publication becomes more mainstream to get those OA publications on the aggregation platforms along with the subscription content. And then a third one, and this is moving into the space of the non-book-like, non-monographic forms. Stanford University Press has received funds from us to start publishing what it's calling interactive scholarly works. So these are works that really can't be considered book-like in any sense. They may be so rich in multimedia data, so interactive, they may have interpretive text, but it may be non-linear, that they really can't be thought of as sort of like a monograph or like a book in any meaningful way. And so they are developing not only sort of production and dissemination, workflows, mechanisms for those, but also just figuring out peer review. How these objects, complex projects, peer review. There needs to be a level of sort of technical peer review as well as peer review of the content. So they'll be developing hopefully some sort of best practices or something that will move towards best practices for peer review of those new genres. And I want to address very briefly the role of libraries. UPScope and Manifold are actually two projects that don't really involve libraries in the development, but we do have a number of grants that do involve libraries and publishers working together. And I think as libraries are increasingly supporting digital scholarship, some are becoming publishers themselves, some libraries are becoming integrated with presses. There are multiple roles libraries can play. And so just to focus on sort of one of those roles, or actually a couple of those roles. We have a grant to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, one of several grants that is helping institutions and their libraries provide better support for humanities scholars who want to develop non-traditional humanities publications, so sort of these interactive scholarly works, digital humanities projects, and helping them to think about at the early stage of research and development what the publication outlets are going to be, what the formats are going to be, what the venues, channels for publication are going to be. And in the case of UIUC, it may be that some of the faculty working with people in digital scholarship and scholarly communications in the library may end up publishing with university presses. In other cases, they may end up publishing through the library. But the idea is to get scholars thinking about publication as they're developing their research. And that's all. Thank you.
I'm Angela Carreno, head of collection development at New York University, and I do not have slides either, so I'll just stay here. Even before I heard about Manifold, I was definitely aware of the need for some outlet for linear static text that makes allowances for what scholars are working on. And as a librarian, there was no easy way to think through it when those questions came in. And on September 15, Rick Anderson posted something on Scholarly Kitchen about an experiment taking place at the University of Utah in collaboration with Oxford University Press and a library effort in collaboration with a scholar to add to the print version of the book primary source material and allowances for scholarly commentary and crowdsourcing options for gathering additional primary sources, etc. And I know that they used a blog platform. I said, okay, well, and it was kind of exciting that a press was okay experimenting with the library and was going to be okay with the static print version combined with full text coverage of the open version with all of this iterative functionality. So that sounded exciting to me. And I have a colleague in my library who was approached by a scholar in our Hebrew and Judaic Studies Center. She published a book with Yale University Press on the Lower East Side, Peddler, and their world. And what she wanted was some sort of way to map their world using GIS technology. And the question was whether or not the librarian could help her. Can we get this online? And is there some way to connect it with the book? And I know that she's been engaged in an effort in collaboration with this scholar to make it happen, and is very excited about the work she's doing. So, and she's using Omega. Okay? Then I am involved in collection steering committee meetings where we worry about the dissertation and our archiving role and the excitement among graduate students about digital humanities and experimental ideas, and how important it is for us to think of ways to archive whatever it is they come up with. So platform is very important, and the fact that it's open source is very important, and finding a collaborative, central way to take advantage of the platform that scales and is sustainable is important. And I'm glad we have these projects going on, because I sure need help. When it comes to UPScope, I do not see libraries using it for vendoring, distribution, workflow, and process, and that isn't the idea. But I'm super excited about search that's taking advantage of natural language queries, and I'm super excited about the metadata, and I think both need to be shared to the advantage of both.
fantastic projects, and maybe to pick up on UPScope, since we just left off on that, I would agree in terms of the library perspective. It has this potential to be this really great search and discovery resource. Of course, for our users, for students and faculty on our campuses, and frequently this is mediated by libraries who are looking at specialized resources for teaching. Students and faculty have utilized such specialized resources to find things. I'm particularly struck by the nature of a lot of publishing, academic publishing these days is highly interdisciplinary. And I think as a faculty member and student who are looking for resources, if you have an engine like this, you probably are going to discover things from authors and probably even subject areas that you may not have thought about on your own, which I think is really part of the beauty and perhaps the great value add to the system is just that, to be able to find things that are written in an interdisciplinary way and perhaps learn of people in certain disciplines working together, drawing from one another's works that, again, you hadn't previously thought of on your own. More specifically, I think the data that would come out of this very robust search tool is going to be a lot of use, not just to publishers, but I think libraries too would really like to better understand user behavior, user searching. Again, being such a highly specialized database, I think we as libraries would like to learn from this as well and better understand what our users are doing when they're seeking literature that's being produced in universities. And I thought too, not necessarily, I don't think libraries are going to use it as a vendor in that regard, but again, that's really not the purpose of this. Again, I think there's a lot to be said for the data interdisciplinariness of it all. Made me also think about, with all of this material online, and again, it can take you to print and take you to online resources, but I wondered about as AEUP and presses in general continue to march along the electronic path as libraries ourselves are doing, if there wasn't in the offing a potential collaboration with HUD in the future in terms of preservation of these materials down the road. On Manifold, this is another very terrific project where I think many of us have thought about, yes, we need this dynamic, iterative, web-based resource that's based on monographic literature. I'm sure many of us probably had that thought 20 years ago. And think about it, right? Hyperlink on the web, through the browser. Obviously, all of us in this ecosystem have struggled with this in these last 20 years. How do we get to this point where it's very easy to build such resources and sustain them and then use them in an instructional way? So Manifold, I think, has, I don't want to set too high a bar for it, but Manifold points in that direction of being an open source platform that will be very easy for people to use, for the presses to use, for the builders of the content, especially to be using and pushing out there. Reminds me of a lot of the digital humanities resources that we see in this building, oftentimes in conjunction with their libraries who help produce these matters and to manage and maintain them. So again, I think it points to that future of, while this is actually being built really of the press at the University of Minnesota, there's a lot of interest and a lot of potential stakeholders and others involved in this. And I particularly think about, as with any digital humanities resources, once these things are built, how do we preserve them and sustain them? They take on a scholarly life of their own, clearly in conjunction with kind of the static monograph that's published, but they become a value-added scholarly resource on their own, these dynamic versions of these books. And I like the fact that they're called projects. We know what books are in print, and we also know what ebooks are. And we always think of ebooks, right? It's a PDF or an EPUB file, very, very flat. It's still kind of black letters on a white, maybe not white paper, but a white screen. So this gets us far beyond that and helps us to think about using the dynamic web in a way that was really intended from the beginning. I think some of the questions going forward for Manifold is great that it's going to be offered as an open source tool. The interesting part will be for this to be built and then sustained over time. Will others contribute to sustaining Manifold and developing it, evolving it over time? Because usually we see those really great open source platforms that that really make it for the long haul are those where there's many stakeholders. But at the same time, it usually is a visionary institution and or person who's putting this platform together, and we have that here at the University of Minnesota, and great support from Mellon, so it's tracking right where it needs to track. Also, from a library perspective, we're certainly production units in a lot of ways, and some of us are run publishing programs. So this too would be interested to see in the future if library publishers actually pick up the use of Manifold in their own operations. I'll leave my comments right there.
So, Tyler, if I could just respond really quickly. So I didn't name our partners, and that was an oversight. We are partnered with the Digital Humanities Center building Manifold, and that's the Digital Scholarship Lab at CUNY and Matt Gold specifically. So as we're building this, digital humanities projects are very much top of mind because those are the folks we're working with to build it, as well as a technology partner called Cast Iron Coding, and Zach Davis, that programmer, is a humanities scholar himself. So everyone coming together around this project are scholars and authors and interested in building the tools they wanted to see, but also the tools that you want. And then in terms of code development, we've committed 10 years of funding to continue support for the Manifold platform, and that's coming from both CUNY and from the University of Minnesota because we want to see this succeed.
So be thinking of questions. I do want to get us started off in a little bit of a discussion. I'm curious, from your varying perspectives, how do you see the kinds of usage information that will come out of these projects? How can they be leveraged and used in a library or by a publisher? Do you have any thoughts on what kind of practical use you would make out of some of the user data you're getting back?
You're targeting the interdisciplinary potential and how that affects the use of a scholarly monograph, and coming up with new types of searching that makes that possible, and having a window on what that does to use that is somewhat detailed, gives us information on how scholarship is used, might give us information on how we support programs, and anything you share would be great.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the questions, both for Manifold and I know it's very much, Ellen, in its infancy with the planning grant, but what are there plans in place for making user data available?
Yeah, it's very early days for UPScope, but certainly you can imagine marketing being very interested in in what kind of interest there is in these connected sub-disciplines and cross-disciplinary areas. And similarly, acquisitions staff trying to find topics of interest to people and authors who are, whose home department may not sound like they're in the field, but they actually are writing about a topic of interest to a different group, that kind of thing.
We haven't been talking about usage data specifically. We're more interested at the moment, we're in the first 6 months of this 3-year project. We've been talking about the annotation and the use of the content by readers. So rather than, say, analytics, we're thinking more about, as we see the interactivity develop, we will get some sense of how these things are being used. That's a question we'll have to get to. Yeah.
Oh, good. Got an audience question, Charles?
Charles Watkinson, University of Michigan Library and Press. I wanted to challenge the contention that UPScope would not be a platform that libraries would buy from. I think it's actually important to think about that in the design, that possibility. And I'm bringing that from the fact that at the start of this meeting, there was the first ever direct meeting between consortia and university presses. And a strong theme coming out of that was that consortia would like to have a much more direct relationship on a purchasing basis with university presses. So I just think it would be a great shame if the idea that libraries would not buy from UPScope was actually ingrained at this time.
I think we want to explore anybody who might want to use the platform for purchasing. We want to explore how to help them do that. But we also want to be agnostic really about your choice of vendor if you have something established. The point is we're not trying to disrupt anything, but we would like to enable.
Why not? Why not disrupt?
You're saying because sort of what we have now may not be working as we'd all like. Okay.
That's the theme of this conference. Yeah.
Well, I would just comment on that briefly. I would say yes, it is about a little bit about disruption, Charles. As libraries, we have our ways of purchasing monographs. We have our kind of intermediaries and genres that we purchase from. But the analog to this too, while we do that, frequently we all buy books through Amazon as well. So what do? We go to their website, we search for the title, we have our purchasing cards, and we purchase. And a lot of times we get things even faster that way. So there is, I would say, there is potential for UPScope to serve in that kind of role, much like we go to Amazon and deal directly with the press providers. It's going to require libraries doing things a little bit differently, and that would be the difficulty right there. But I see potential for it.
Well, and one of the things I know in some of the early discussions with the UPScope, we've talked about, how for the user going to something saying, oh, I really, I discovered this book, I like it, and putting some sort of mechanism in place to connect that user with the library to say, oh, the library holds this book through Muse, or, my dream would be the user, if the library does not already hold the book or have access to it, that you can put in a direct request. Hey, library, I discovered this. I would like it. Certainly from the publisher perspective, that would be great. So I think as these things evolve, getting as much feedback and sort of thinking about the end user and what we would like to happen will be important.
My thinking was that there has to be scale and sustainability when it comes into the workflow that ties in with the processing of ebook receipts in a library system. So when you develop a distribution platform, you have to take the workflow and the process into consideration and build that into the platform. And if there's not a willingness to consider library services, libraries can't cope.
Got some people lining up for questions. Meredith?
Hi, Meredith Babb with the University Press of Florida. I have a question for the librarians. As university presses begin to tackle more and more of the web projects, how are you thinking about curation of these? Or does it keep you up at night?
It keeps me up at night. This is core to what we do. We engage in the preservation of information, including digital objects. Some of us have worked at it for many years. So it is a big issue. When I think about even in terms of like Manifold Project, you think instantly about the creators of the objects using that platform. It's back, what are the file formats you're using? What are the applications that you're using to bring about parts of these objects, and what's required to be maintained of those items, those tools and applications and formats to be able to sustain the object in the future. This is the classic problem that we've had for 20, 25 years around preservation of digital objects. So it is a big deal. I think some of the digital humanities projects in particular are very challenging because they're very composite, very multi-filed, and they're not simple items to preserve. So it is going to be, it has been a big challenge. I don't know that this project introduces anything new to that. I think it's just it's that ongoing struggle and challenge of how we do this very well. We have a project at Virginia Tech. I'm not going to mention the name at the moment, but it's a very old very, let's say, very old humanities projects in Virginia that's not going to be live anymore, and our library is being asked if we can preserve this, and it's a bunch of HTML and links and images, and it's so vast and so large. And what I just heard 2 days ago before coming down here was my group doesn't think they can handle this and preserve it. And I thought, gosh, 2015, and we still can't do this well. So this is a big challenge for us.
So I consider the University Press output a special category of book, and the role of the University Press and library is an unusual combo in that, in essence, we can revert back to the same mission, right? We want to support the humanities or the humanistic social sciences. The book is bread and butter, and where it's going is bread and butter related to that support. And my hope is that when I do library work, I'm supporting the creation of new knowledge, excitement, new ideas. We're going places where we haven't been before. And I would rely on peer review and selection accomplished through the University Press to make sure that there's a certain quality level. So the task at hand is how on earth we come up with sustainability for something that has unpredictable and often low use, but is awfully exciting.
All right, one more question?
Yes, my name is John Dowd, and this question comes from, I'm on the NISO committee for discovery to delivery topics, and I can well understand the importance of discovery from a marketing standpoint of the collection of university presses. It's less clear to me why that's an attractive thing for a user, to be able to have, a lot of things I'm really interested in is how people discover things they're not looking for. And so an inference engine seems to be like, that's really neat, but I don't know why you want that scope to be, well, this is what you could discover among university presses and nothing else. It just strikes me as good for marketing, but I don't understand why it's good for a user.
I don't understand, John, so I'm stumped. One can browse as well as search for a particular topic, so there should be serendipitous discovery possible.
Oh no, I see that with regard to what you're trying to build, but the scope of discovery is only titles which are published by university presses. So why would a student of humanities say, gee, I think I'm going to discover some new things today, but I'm going to limit my domain to university presses? It doesn't strike me as a valid thing for a user, that's all.
Because UPs are the core, cool, substantive, peer-reviewed place. I think in the future there could be, just thinking wildly and speculatively and not speaking for the project, there could be rings of additional sources of content in there. I'd like to search for UPs only, or I'd like to search for the broader scholarly publishing community data, or I'd like to search, it could have rings like that, but the focus for the starter of this is definitely university presses.
I can comment on that briefly. I kind of, from a library view, I kind of see this as it's a highly specialized database, but it brings you to a set of highly vetted, in some ways, carefully curated, you could say, content, scholarly content. That's the job of what university presses do. So that's one way to look at the world, whether we like it or not. The world is made up of a bunch of specialized databases. Look at all the databases we license in libraries. There isn't one database for everything that works as well as we want it to. So I think it contributes to that universe. Is that perfect? No, it's not. But it's a specialized database or search engine that comes to a broad base of very highly vetted content.
Hey, real quickly, if you're free for me, just to add one more dimension to the answer to that question. The discoverability tool for unvetted content already exists. Right? So this is the discoverability tool for authoritative vetted content through a serious scholarship.
No, but there are other sources for vetted, peer-reviewed,
They're not free to commercialize in the algorithm and not free to commercialize in the accessibility option, access options.
All right, thank you. And, several of us will stick around afterwards if you have other questions or, want to offer library feedback for these projects. Thank you to all our panelists and for you being here this morning.